For many centuries, people all around the world have talked about King Henry VIII because he was one of the most famous and controversial kings in history. He ruled England in the 1500s and became known for his 6 marriages, his powerful personality, and his huge impact on the English church. But one mystery has always followed him through the years. What exactly caused his slow and painful decline before he died? Written records show that during the last years of his life, Henry VIII was no longer the strong and energetic man he once was. He became extremely overweight, suffered from leg ulcers that refused to heal, experienced severe mood swings, and often stayed in bed for long periods. Historians had many theories over the centuries, but no one could give a certain answer. Some believed he had diabetes, others thought he had gout, and many believed his obesity alone was the reason for his terrible health. However, recent DNA studies done, almost 500 years after his death, have surprised experts. New scientific research has uncovered genetic clues that point to deeper health problems that no one fully understood before. These DNA findings are now helping historians see a clearer picture of Henry VIII's final years, showing that his suffering may have come from hidden genetic disorders rather than just poor lifestyle choices. This has changed many old assumptions about him. It turns out that Henry VIII may have inherited dangerous health risks that shaped his personality, his decisions, and even the future of England itself. The new evidence is both fascinating and worrying because it paints a darker picture of a king whose body and mind were possibly failing long before his final breath, and all of this may have been written in his genes from the very beginning. The new DNA research suggests that King Henry VIII may have had a rare blood disorder known as Kell-positive syndrome. This condition is genetic, meaning a person is born with it and can pass it on to their children. Kell-positive men sometimes experience a surprising type of health decline as they age, including sudden changes in behavior, long periods of fatigue, and problems with healing. Looking at Henry's life, this theory explains many strange events. Henry VIII started his reign as a healthy and active young man. He loved sports, hunting, jousting, and dancing. He was tall, strong, and admired by nearly everyone. But as he reached his early 30s, historians noticed a shift in his personality. He became more suspicious, more angry, and quicker to punish people. Around this same time, he had a dangerous jousting accident that left him unconscious for hours. Researchers now believe that his body may have already been weakened by Kell-positive syndrome. Because of the condition, the accident likely worsened his health dramatically, possibly causing long-term effects on his brain. But the most telling clue is related to his wives and children. Henry VIII had 6 wives, yet only one of them, Jane Seymour, gave birth to a healthy son, Edward. Many of Henry's wives suffered miscarriages or stillbirths. Modern researchers now believe the Kell-positive gene may explain this. If Henry VIII carried the Kell antigen and his wives were Kell-negative, their bodies would reject pregnancies after the first one. This is exactly what happened historically. These genetic discoveries show that Henry's blood disorder affected not only his health, but also the entire history of England. The chaos around his marriages, his desperate search for a son, and even the religious changes he forced on the country were possibly influenced by a condition he never knew he had. A condition hidden in his DNA from birth. Another shocking part of the DNA findings suggests that Henry VIII may have suffered from McLeod syndrome, a very rare genetic disorder that affects the nervous system, blood, and muscles. People with this condition often develop personality changes, memory problems, and mental instability as they grow older. These symptoms match exactly with what historians describe about Henry during the later part of his life. At the beginning of his rule, Henry was known as a charming, intelligent, and thoughtful leader. He wrote music, played instruments, danced, debated, and even wrote books. But McLeod syndrome usually begins to show signs in a person's 40s right. When Henry's behavior became more unpredictable, he began making extreme political decisions, ordering executions with little evidence, and reacting with anger at the smallest disagreement. Many of his closest advisors noticed that the king's moods changed instantly and unpredictably. He could be warm and friendly one day, then furious and violent the next. This pattern is very similar to symptoms seen in modern McLeod patients. The condition also causes muscle weakness and difficulty walking, which fits Henry's later struggles. His legs were often swollen, extremely painful, and covered with ulcers that refused to heal. McLeod syndrome makes the blood more likely to break down, which could explain why Henry's wounds were so severe. The disorder also damages the brain over time, leading to memory loss and impulsive decisions. Historians have always wondered why Henry seemed to lose control of his emotions and judgment as he aged. Now, thanks to DNA research, experts believe that his mental and physical decline may not have been entirely his fault. He may have been living with a slow, painful disorder that destroyed his muscles, weakened his mind, and changed his personality. These new findings help us understand the king not only as a powerful ruler, but also as a man trapped in a body that was failing him. Long before the end, one of the most visible signs of Henry VIII's declining health was his severe obesity. Near the end of his life, he weighed close to 400 pounds. Many people assumed he simply ate too much and moved too little. While it is true that Henry enjoyed rich meals, modern researchers now say his extreme weight gain may have been caused by a mix of genetic disorders and injuries. His jousting accident, which left him unconscious and possibly with a brain injury, prevented him from staying physically active. After the accident, Henry could no longer play sports or ride horses like before. Because of his weight and swollen legs, he spent most of his time sitting, which made the problem worse. But DNA research hints that his body may have had trouble controlling fat and insulin. Similar to modern genetic forms of obesity, there is also evidence that he may have had type 2 diabetes in his final years. Diabetes causes slow healing, constant thirst, frequent infections, and nerve damage, all symptoms Henry experienced. His leg ulcers were so large and deep that servants had to clean and drain them daily. A painful and embarrassing process for a king. Clothing had to be cut open and replaced around his legs to prevent pressure on the wounds. Some reports say the ulcers smelled so bad that people avoided walking near him. This level of infection is common in diabetic patients. His obesity also worsened his heart health. Chronic swelling in his legs suggests poor blood circulation, which could indicate heart failure. Researchers believe that his genetic conditions may have made his weight gain more extreme and uncontrollable. It was not simply overeating, but a combination of genetic weakness, hormonal imbalance, and years of physical injuries. This new understanding helps explain why Henry became a very different person from the confident young king he once was. His body was falling apart, and even with all the wealth and power in the world, he could not escape the slow decline happening inside him. These health problems damaged his mood, clouded his judgment, and changed the direction of England forever. One of the most mysterious and painful problems Henry VIII suffered from was the constant ulceration on his legs. These ulcers were open, infected wounds that never fully healed. They caused excruciating pain, swelling, fever, and sometimes bleeding. Based on DNA findings and medical knowledge, historians now believe Henry may have had chronic venous insufficiency. This condition occurs when veins in the legs cannot pump blood back to the heart properly, causing blood to collect in the lower limbs. Over time, this leads to skin breakdown, swelling, infections, and ulcers. Combined with obesity and diabetes, the condition becomes nearly impossible to treat. Henry's ulcers were so severe that special metal cases were built to protect his legs. Servants often had to pop and clean the infected areas, which must have been incredibly painful. Some reports from the time describe Henry screaming during treatments. His limited mobility also made him dependent on others. He needed machines to help lift him in and out of bed. Long ramps had to be built, so he could move around palace rooms without climbing steps. The ulcers also may have caused blood poisoning, which would explain his frequent fevers and exhaustion. These symptoms often made him impatient, angry, and emotionally unstable. Chronic pain can change a person's personality, and Henry's temper became worse over time. Many decisions that shaped England, such as the break from the Catholic Church, the executions of wives, and the removal of trusted advisors, happened during periods when he was in severe physical misery. This means the king may not always have been able to control his reactions, especially under stress or pain. His advisors often wrote about moments when Henry would suddenly become furious, only to calm down minutes later. These unpredictable behaviors frightened the court but they also shaped his leadership style. The king became more paranoid, convinced that people were plotting against him. This paranoia led to the execution of close friends, loyal servants, and several wives. If his brain was being damaged by genetic disease, these actions may have been driven by fear, confusion, and emotional instability rather than pure cruelty. Pain also plays a major role in mood. Henry lived with constant leg infections, swelling, headaches, and insomnia. Chronic pain changes the way the brain works and makes emotional control very difficult. This combination of physical and genetic problems likely influenced nearly every decision he made after age 40. With this new research, historians see him not only as a frightening ruler, but also as a sick man fighting against invisible internal forces. This human side does not excuse his actions, but it helps explain the rapid decline of a once brilliant mind, replaced by anger, fear, and suspicion in his final years. When looking at the final years of Henry VIII's life, it becomes clear that his body was shutting down in many ways. His legs were so swollen he could barely stand. His heart struggled to pump blood. His mental health was declining. The DNA-based theories also explained his long periods of isolation. Henry stopped attending public events, avoided long meetings, and stayed in his private rooms for weeks at a time. This withdrawal is common in people dealing with depression caused by chronic illness. He was surrounded by servants, but he was also lonely. Only a few trusted individuals were allowed near him, partly because of the terrible smell from his ulcers, and partly because he feared assassination. Toward the end, Henry may have known his time was short. His letters grew shorter, his orders more confused, and his temper more violent. When he died in 1547, he was only 55 years old, but his health problems made him seem much older. The new DNA evidence suggests that his death was not simply from obesity or infection, but from a combination of heart failure, blood disorder complications, and long-term organ damage possibly linked to genetic conditions. This paints a sad picture of a king who once dreamed of greatness, but ended his life trapped in a body full of pain, disease, and weakness. His final days reveal a man who is physically broken and mentally exhausted. Even with all the wealth, medicine, and power available to him, there was nothing anyone could do. His genetic challenges had caught up to him. These findings help modern readers understand that Henry VIII's decline was more tragic and complex than previously believed. He was a powerful king, but he was also a victim of his own biology. The discovery of these possible genetic conditions does more than explain. Henry VIII's death reshapes our understanding of history. Many of his most important choices may have been influenced by health problems he didn't even know he had. His desperate search for a male heir, which led to the separation from the Catholic Church, may have been caused by the KEL-positive gene preventing healthy pregnancies. His violent temper and sudden paranoia may have come from McLeod syndrome, damaging his brain. His weight gain, leg ulcers, and infections may have been made worse by diabetes and chronic circulation problems. These illnesses together created a dangerous mixture that changed not only his personality, but also the entire future of England. Without these genetic conditions, Henry might not have divorced Catherine of Aragon. The Church of England might not have been created. Anne Boleyn might have lived. Europe's religious map might have looked completely different. This shows how deeply a single person's biology can influence the world. The new DNA evidence does not erase the cruelty Henry showed, nor does it excuse his decisions. But it gives us a clearer understanding of why he changed so much from a young, hopeful king to a fearful and destructive ruler. His life becomes not only a political story but also a medical one. A story about how hidden genetic problems can shape a person's body, mind, and destiny. Nearly 500 years later, science has finally helped uncover the truth behind the king's death, truth that is far sadder and more complicated than anyone imagined. Henry VIII did not simply die of being overweight or old age. He may have died from a lifetime of genetic challenges that slowly destroyed his body, damaged his mind, and changed the course of history forever.